And I said, yes, Bob. He said, all helped you because I helped you and wanted you to come, which of course was obvious. I wouldn't have made it unless that were true. And he said that that morning I had tried to send a cable to Liz and Ginny to express something of what I felt meeting Baba, and I couldn't do it. It was a terrible cable. It didn't say anything. It wasn't worth sending, but I sent it. So when I saw Baba, he said that he had Eric send a cable to Ginny and Liz, and he signed my name to it. So he had Eric read me the cable, and what he said to them was, Baba says, because you have helped me come to Baba, you have made Baba come closer to you. Baba sends his love to you both. He signed it, Love Ann. And he said, do you think they'll like it? Years later, when Kitty Davy heard that story, she said those two had no idea the benefit they had brought upon themselves. She said it's very easy when Baba asks you to do something, you do it, of course. But to see an opportunity and seize it without being asked was so rare that they had literally forced him to take a step closer to them than might have been planned in the normal events, the normal time. You know, that love, that willingness to share had pulled him to them. Well, then there were two of us sitting against the wall with one another. And in the middle of that darshan, I heard Arnavasdada Chanji let out a shout from the back of the room. She said, Harry? And there was Harry Kenmore, the blind chiropractor from New York, who had simply arrived unannounced, hadn't told anybody he was coming, got in the darshan line. And Baba looked at him and he said, Harry, what are you doing here? And Harry said, I've come to see my dear Pop. And Baba said, well, your dear Pop is happy to see his dear son. You know? And then there were three of us sitting in a row against the wall with Rano. And the Indians were getting very curious about these three Westerners that showed up in the middle of the Indian summer when there was no other Westerners in Pune. And who were these people? So Baba decided to introduce us. And he said, this is Fred Winnefeld from New York, Harry Kenmore from New York, and Ian Conlon from the United States. Mirror also had an interpretation about that. It was a nice one. She said she felt that when Baba said that, it meant that I represented all the women in the United States who couldn't be there at that moment, that I was there for them as well as for myself. So you're welcome. I don't know who was there for you guys. Probably Fred. And when he said that, the stand con from the United States, he said, she is a blessed woman. Otherwise, why would she have come when she had never met me? Her love brought her, and that love is my gift to her. And as my Baba confirmed for me, that's the feeling of love that I had felt in the Lagoon Cabin in 1958, that it was his gift and not mine. Well, there were a number of things that happened, particularly that afternoon, and Monty said Baba began to, short discourses, short statements. She said, it's because you three are here. Normally wouldn't do this. But at one point, he asked me if I knew why St. Francis loved Jesus more than Peter did. And he said it was because Francis never met Jesus, that his love and his longing were that much stronger. which of course meant a great deal to me. I had spent years being terribly jealous of all the people who had met Baba. Why am I left out? Why isn't it me? And it was such a sweet thing to say. Then he asked me if I knew about Mira, and I had never heard of her. And Baba frequently told this story of Mira, emphasizing different parts of it at different times, always with a different point. He said Mira had been a Hindu saint, devoted to Krishna long after his lifetime, had given up everything, family, title, wealth, to spend her life wandering, telling people about her Lord Krishna. And then he got very serious, and it was the only serious moment in the whole 5 days that I remember. And he looked at me and he said, Mira never put anyone or anything between herself and Krishna. And he repeated it. And I felt he was saying, I am your Krishna. Don't you ever put anyone or anything between us. And I took it very seriously, the way it was meant. And I would be hard put to ever forget the expression on his face when he said it. And it was very serious. And then it was just back to this lightness. He then asked me if I had read any of his books. And there wasn't much available that time. I said, Bob, I had read God to Man and Man to God. Somebody found a copy of The Perfect Master. And eventually John Bass found me a copy of the original 5-volume Discourses. And a copy of Avatar. And then he said, have you read God Speaks? And I had avoided mentioning that book. Because I had to say to him, well, Baba, I tried, and I got to page 64, and I didn't understand a word. And he leaned back in his chair, and we laughed. I heard the gurgle in his throat. He was trying not to laugh. I'm not amused. Okay. And he said, never mind. It's not important. Don't bother. And I was so relieved because I had never been able to get through that book. And he knew I wouldn't. That wasn't what appealed to me. You know, that I would sit and listen to people tell stories about being with Baba for days. But the idea of God realization, the planes didn't appeal to me. I didn't know what they were. Therefore, they weren't important to me. Being loved by him was what was important to me. And knowing about him, and paying attention so that I would never do anything to lose it, to lose that love, was all that was important. But I was grateful for being let off the hook. He told other people to read God Speaks 7 times and understand it. This is a little story that shows how Baba gets his own way even when we think we're getting ours. You know the name Dr. Deshmukh, that he took the notes for the original discourses, did Sparks of the Truth, and he was there, and he suddenly decided he wanted to make a speech. So he stood up and he asked Baba, Baba, I want to make a speech. And Baba said, I said, no speeches. He said, please, Baba, I want to make a speech. Very important. And they went on back and forth for a little while. And finally, Baba said, all right, make your speech. And as Deshmukh started to talk, Baba was sitting there barefooted with his feet crossed in front of him. And there was a little 3- or 4-year-old boy sitting right in front of his feet. And the moment that Deshmukh started to talk, Baba started wiggling his toes at that little boy, and 1,000 pairs of eyes went to Baba's toes and that little boy, and not one person heard a single word. So everybody was happy. Baba got his way. Deshmukh made his speech. He was happy. And nobody heard the speech. And I have frequently thought over the years that somewhere behind my back, Baba is getting his way all the time when I think I'm getting mine, and he's wiggling his toes at some little boy while I'm just going on my merry way. The memory's getting short, sometimes I have to check. Or later, I'll finish with the story. When Harry Kenmore had arrived, the first morning after he was there, Harry was a big bear of a man. He'd be very gruff. And as it happened, the first morning, Fred and I happened to arrive in the dining room of the hotel at the same time for breakfast. We hadn't arranged it, so we were sharing a table. And a little while later, Harry came downstairs, came over to our table, and started berating us both for cutting him out and going down to breakfast without him. He thought we had done it deliberately. And I got completely angry, and I blew my top and told him I was not there for him. I was there for Mara Baba, and I didn't care whether he came to breakfast with me or not. I was really, and so he harumphed and well, it turned out we all went out to see Baba in the morning in the same car. Major came to get us. We get out of the car in front of Guru Prasad, and Harry, who can't see, reaches for someone's arm and gets mine. So we walk up into Guru Prasad to Baba, arm in arm, together. And Baba looks at Harry, and he looks at me, and he starts to laugh. He knew darn well what had happened. And we go arm in arm to him after this battle royal in the dining room of the Upstate Hotel. Harry didn't see that. He couldn't see the expression on Baba's face. But it was like, Baba knew very well what had happened. And it started and it ended within 30 minutes. And after that, Harry and I were very fond of each other. We might battle, and carry on, but we did love each other. And we respected each other. Well, when the last day of that darshan came, I was so head over heels in love by that time. I wanted to do a very human thing. I wanted to get dressed up for Baba for that last meeting. And I didn't have anything with me to get dressed up in. I hadn't planned on staying. So I was wearing the same thing that I had worn every day, washed out every night, drip dry. And on that last morning, Baba had sent word. What it was happening was that Baba met with the men Mandali, men visitors, every morning. Wherever he was, it was a Mandali hall. And he was asking Fred and Harry to come out to be with the men and with him. And he would send me off with Arnavas to meet another group of Dada Chanjis and Jessawalas while the men were at Guru Prasad. Now this last morning, he sent word that I should come out to Guru Prasad with Harry and Fred, which I did. And Baba was in Mandali Hall. And I went in with Harry and Fred. And Baba said, now there are no women allowed here. So you're not supposed to be here. But you come in and you sit down for 5 minutes. So I went in and I sat down. Harry has brought a new crop of jokes for Baba. He's telling it to Baba. Baba turns to me and he said, now you're really not supposed to be here, so you have to leave. So I got up and I started out. He said, come back for another 5 minutes. So I'm back and I sat down again. 2 minutes later, he said, now you really have to go. You go to Maranmani. You're not supposed to be here. I started out, and he put out his hand again. And he was laughing, really laughing. He said, you make sure when I come back in 700 years that you come back as a man so you can attend these exclusive meetings. And my response is, yes, Baba. I didn't know if he was kidding or what was going on. And later that evening, when I saw Francis Brabazon, I asked him, I said, Francis, was Baba kidding? And if he wasn't kidding, how do I make sure that I come back? And he said, Baba will frequently tell you something lightly, but he's made you a promise. And all you have to do is remember it. Just don't forget. Well, when we went out of Mandali Hall, Arnavas was waiting for me. She took me to Mara's room. And there was Mara and Mani and 20 other women, the Maharani of Baroda, Katie, Gohair, all of them. And Mara said that they had a sari they wanted me to try on. And they all got involved in this. Getting the sari on, Gohair standing in front of me and saying, now put your hands together and say Namaste, Baba. Say it again, until I got it somewhere near right. Then they turned me around. The sari was beautiful. It was lavender with gold flecks in it. It was lovely. And it was one of the few times in my life when I was very skinny, so it was a perfect fit. And we trooped out into the main hall. We crossed the hall. Gohair opened another door, gave me a shove, and I was back in Mandali Hall with Baba, the men Mandali, Harry, Fred, and 40 men who had just arrived from Hamapur. And I had never worn a sari before, so my instinct is, how is this staying on? And I was worried. But I remembered what Gohair said, and I looked at Baba and my hands together, and I said, Namaste, Baba. It's beautiful. Called me over and gave me an embrace. And he said, now you go back to Mara. And I did. I went back. And Mara said that the sari was hers. And that Baba had said that she could give it to me as a gift from her and from Baba. Well, what nobody knew was, about my wish that morning to get dressed up for him. But he knew, and he provided one of Mara's saris for me to do it in. And then I, of course, felt I wanted to give her something. What could I do? But I wouldn't ask because Baba had said in that same letter, don't bring any gifts for me, don't bring any for my Mandali. So I wasn't going to even ask. But that evening he sent Gohair to my hotel. And Gohair said that Baba wanted to know if I would get some things in the States for Mara that she needed and send them to her. And I said I'd be very happy to do it. And I said, do you think it would be all right with Baba if I paid for this? And she laughed and she said, Baba said you wouldn't take the money. Whatever I wanted that week, no matter how dumb and just plain human, he gave me. And it was, as Margaret Crass said, by the time he was finished with the courtship, you would do anything in the world that he asked you to do. And of course, it was true. Well, when that final afternoon came, Baba, there were 3,000 to 5,000 Easterners still hanging out in Pune on the theory that Baba might do exactly what he did do. Even though he told everybody to go home after their hour, he suddenly announced that anybody who was still in Pune, whether they had had their hour or not, must come to Guru Prasad that afternoon and receive Prasad from his hand. So 5,000 people jammed into that Guru Prasad, lined up, and it took Baba until 10 o'clock at night, one by one by one. And we were told, you take the Prasad, you turn around and you leave immediately. So when I went up to get mine, I was struck by this impulse to kiss his hand. And when he put the prasad in my hand, like this, I took his hand, not realizing how light his arm was, and bent to kiss him, and hit myself right in the teeth with his fist. I was so embarrassed that, because of Edward's age, had to speak out on his father.
Right.
And because it was the last day and they were only there, Baba let them sit at his feet the entire time. That afternoon, they held a pillow over his feet to keep people from bowing down to him, which he didn't want. And I remember Edward, the whole time, just looking up at Baba's face with his mouth open, just unbelieving, totally enthralled. And Erwin saying to Baba, "I want God realization." And Baba turned to Erwin and said, "We won't talk about it now. Listen to the music." Sweet. Sweet. When it came, Baba wanted us all to go back to New York together on the same flight. We'd all come, different airlines, different flights. He had Mayurji arranged for us all to go back on the same Air India flight I was to get. We went out to say goodbye to Baba that morning, and I was feeling I couldn't have taken any more anyway, but I of course didn't want to leave. And I was crying when I went up to Baba. And to get a last embrace, and I was sobbing. And I saw this expression on Baba's face, this disturbed look. I realized I had caused it, but I didn't understand it. And then it was over. You did not linger. Rano got me by the arm. We were out the door and on our way. I remembered over the next year that look on Baba's face. It was in the back of my mind. I didn't dwell on it, didn't understand it. But came the East-West gathering 18 months later. And I went back. This was the opportunity. He had promised. He kept his word. There was another opportunity. And Liz and I went together. It was a whole different time. There were 200 Westerners, 5,000 Easterners, very little individual attention. And I reacted like any spoiled brat would. I didn't like it. And at one point, we had gone a few of the women at a time to see Mira, and when we came back, out under the pandal, I at one point thought, I'm going to stand here and look at Baba until he turns and look at me. And so I did that. I stood on the corner of the dais, and I stared at him. And he finally turned and he looked at me, and the expression was, "All right, I have looked. Now will you please sit down?" It's like, that was a time when many people, including Kitty, talked about it afterwards, felt Baba withdrawing. Even Francis Brabazon in the book, The East-West Gathering, said it was like a father saying to his child, "Now you must wait because I have work to do." And then there is the gentle closing of the door. And everybody in Norway felt that Baba was pulling back. And he told Margaret Krask and his dancers they would never see him again. And the dancers said, "Oh, well, he's said that before." But Margaret said, "Not like that." And she believed him. They wouldn't. Well, when the last day of the East-West Gathering came, we were told that we should come out, say goodbye to Baba as a group. And all of a sudden, all I could think about was, I'm going to get another embrace. I wasn't thinking about it being goodbye. Just that I'm going to get close. I'm going to have an embrace. So when I walked up to Baba, I was very happy. And I leaned over, and he put out his arms, and I leaned over and I kissed him on both cheeks. And I said, "Thank you, Baba, thank you." And when I stepped back, he was beaming from ear to ear. It was like he was on fire. You know, that bright gold that you see at the center of an intense fire, like that. Brilliant. And he reached up out of his chair to my face. Like, you got it. You know, and I remembered the way I'd left the year before. Crying and sad and saying, "This is the way I want you to be. As happy leaving as you were when you came. There is no separation. I'm always with you." And for a moment, it felt like I was in just the two of us in this cocoon of delight that unknowingly I had pleased him for a moment. He was happy with me, and boy, I was happy for him. It was like it excluded the rest of the world. It was quick, it was a memory. I still have it, it's so vivid. I was struck by the fact, what a simple thing it took to please him, and by the fact that he let me know it. That's a treasure to me forever. And the expression on his face, I would give anything in the world to see that look of pleasure in him. To know that I had in some way pleased him. But if it never happens again, I had it once. And I don't forget it. It is my most vivid memory of Bob's face. And I knew he was telling me, that's what I want. I want you to love me. To be happy. And yes, to remember once in a while to say thank you. That would be nice. And I knew then, I had a feeling then that I wasn't going to see him again. That he had made a point and wanted to make that the actual meetings were over. It was a whole, and it would go on and change. Relationship would become something else, but that part of it was good. And it was. That's the story. That's that part of the story. Yes.
I do have this question because I remember Rustam and Zora telling about the joke they played. Did you know about that? Did they tell you when you got there?
No, I knew something had happened because Francis introduced me to Nariman Dadachanji. And when I met Nariman blushed from his neck to the top of his head. And I looked at him, I didn't understand it. And Francis just said, "Oh, well, he met you this morning." And I knew something had gone on, but I never heard the story until 10 years later.
Really?
When I went back to India in 71. And it had become a favorite joke story for the Mandali. And they all had different versions. It was never the same story. I didn't know anything about it.
Well, I must say that I'm incredibly privileged to have you as my guest. I didn't know that you had had that close a contact with Baba. I'm going to keep you up until 2 o'clock this morning asking you questions.
You did know.
Well, I forgot. I have no brain. I'm sure you told us last time.
Would you repeat the statement, Anne, for those in the back?
The silly twit part. They know I'm a silly twit, don't you?
And you were mistaken. Was there another time after the East West gathering that Bob was sitting with people for an hour? That didn't happen again?
No, but he did. There was an abortive attempt at another darshan, 65, which turned out to be only for the Easterners. And I found out later, everybody actually was planning to go in 65. But it turned out it was not Baba's idea, it was Harry Kinmore's. And it was one of those things that Harry pushed Baba. And when you do that, what's liable to happen is it's not going to come off. And it didn't. Baba canceled it for the Westerners because of war. Whose war? Was that with Pakistan? And it was canceled and did not happen. And Margaret Krask did not sign up to go on that trip because she knew it had not come from Baba, it wasn't Baba's idea, and she knew from past experience it was not going to happen. And it didn't. You can't push him around. Dinah wanted me to tell you something. I think most of you are aware that a couple of hurricanes have gone by Myrtle Beach. And with Frank, I got the last flight to Myrtle Beach before they closed the airport. Sorry.
Hands off.
Before they closed the airport.
Yeah, I got the last flight. The U.S. Air was calling us the last flight out of Dodge. I called the center Friday morning to see if what kind of damage and how it has survived, and got Carol Kelly in the gateway. And she said, actually, it was fine. It had happened at low tide. It went by. There was less debris than had been with the last one. A couple of trees down, not much damage, and they were open. But she said she had gotten a call from Michael DaCosta in England. Michael, it was on British TV. He'd watched this hurricane coverage and heard a commentator say, God must have a bubble around Myrtle Beach.
Oh, wow.
Just, they're not going to hit it. At least, not yet.
Does anyone have any questions for Anne? Would you like to ask?
If you like.
How old were you that time?
How old were you when you met?
You can turn off the
28.
Anne, can you tell us a little about what you're doing right now, filling your time with the different Baba projects and things? That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm counting the days to retirement.
Oh, okay.
We've done it.
Yeah.
Well, I run the Sharia Press book room, which includes editing manuscripts, writing copy for book jackets, as well as handling book sales. I've been on the board of the Maher Center for 1.5 years and have survived. And I'm on the board of Sharia Foundation as well. And therefore, since my job is now interfering with those other functions, I'm going to retire in a little over a year from the book room. Spend more time at the center.
How long has Sharia Press been?
1970.
Just a brief history of the beginnings.
Well, Sheila Krinsky and Andy Lesnick started it at the behest of Kitty Davey. She wanted Sheila to start a Baba Press, and she hooked Sheila up with Andy, who could come with some funding. And they started out, they naively thought that they would be able to survive by printing Baba material, and learned in 7 days they had printed everything that was available, and they were not going to make it that way. So they had to go out and turn themselves into a commercial printer. And they have done that. They're now in their 3rd building, and for the 3rd time are desperately looking for more space because there's no place to park, there's no more office space, and they're out of room. And they've done a tremendous job, and they're very respected commercial printer on the southeast coast. And that has supported the Baba books over the years. Now, Sharia Foundation is taking over publication, nonprofit. it was nonprofit anyway, so you might as well have the name of the game. Taking over publication.